Hello and welcome to another episode of the British and Irish Eagles. I am Liam O'Neill, your host, and I am here solo today. We got some good news to kick off the podcast. Congratulations to Phil Defence, Mount Stevens, on the birth of his new lovely daughter, Evelyn, aka Evie. That is why Phil cannot make it. Mick has 3 children under the age of 5 and there is no childcare at the moment as we're in the holidays, which is why Mick can't make it. And Tony is off gallivanting somewhere for New Year's Eve with his lovely wife, Yvonne. And that's why you've got me today, folks. It's going to be a pretty short podcast. I'm going to get through the Dallas Cowboys game and the reaction to the Dallas Cowboys game. And of course, we are going to discuss whether Saquon Barkley should be rested or whether he should play. We now know the answer to that question after Nick Sirianni's press conference yesterday afternoon, late our time here in the UK. The Eagles will be resting Saquon. So I'm going to get into that, discuss a little bit about the pros and cons of that decision. And I've got some fan mail to answer as well from our British and Irish Eagles members. So, without any further ado, the Eagles exude excellence against the diabolical Dallas Cowboys. It is a winning podcast, folks. I was supposed to do this on Monday, but New Year's and Happy New Year's to you all got in the way of that. Don't know about you all, but I had a quiet one. Me and my wife watched Juror number 2, which was very good. And we also brought in a new year with good old Jules Holland with a glass or two of fizz. But listen, the Eagles game against Dallas was the meal we have all been waiting for. A beautifully cooked apple pie, which crumbles as easy as the team it represents, sprinkled and finished with the tears of Dallas Cowboy fans. This victory tastes like heaven. Look, the Eagles go 13-3. It's a wonder to behold how they are playing now compared to what we saw at the start of the season. It was a crushing victory, 40-7 at Lincoln Financial Field. And I will admit, I was skeptical about how Kenny Pickett would play. I was skeptical about how the team would play. We saw in the previous week when Hurts went down what that did to the offense, what that did to Barkley's ability to run the ball with them packing the box, not scared about the passing game that Pickett was throwing them. And look, we're going to get into the good, the bad, and damn right sexy in just a minute. The Eagles get the Eagles get the win, which is what's really, really important, and there's some standout players. So without any further ado, let's get into the good, the bad, and the damn right sexy. I haven't got Phil here to plug in and play the damn right sexy music, but look, we're going to start off with the bad because there's only one, and I feel like I'm going to get a bit of hate for saying this. So let me know your thoughts. But I've got Quinyon Mitchell in the bad column. It wasn't a horrendous game from Q. It's not like he leaked 100 yards or anything like that. But 2 weeks in a row, buddy, you've given up a touchdown, and this one was on you. You were in the race for defensive rookie of the year, and now that's going to be going to Jared Verse. There's kind of no doubt about it. I think Jared Verse had another sack and a few tackles for loss at the weekend as well. The only thing you had going for your Q to win this was no touchdowns on the year, and in the last 2 games you've given up 2. I know people are going to say, "Well, Liam, he could have had that interception, and CJ Gardner Johnson stole it off him." I don't know. CJ Gardner Johnson was going for the ball. Q was in a great position. It was a bad throw, and you didn't get it, mate. At the end of the day, you didn't get it. So I'm afraid by giving up the touchdown, the only touchdown that we conceded of the game, Q, you're the only one who's made it into my bad column this week. But I have no doubt you're going to be back in the good column, not this coming Sunday against the Giants, because I would imagine you'll be rested, or at least you'll be dressed, but not playing. Certainly when we come to the wildcard round, I expect you to be back in that good column 100%. Let's talk about CJGJ now. And that brings us into the good part of the good, the bad, and the damn right sexy. What a huge game for CJ Gardner Johnson. Two interceptions, but it's not just the interceptions. By the way, he now has six interceptions, which takes him to second in the NFL this year for interceptions. I think he had six the season before last, before he went to the back to the Lions. Um, and he's also 15th in the league for all passes defended, so which is superb for a safety. It's not just that though; it's the way CJ Gardner Johnson riles up the people around him. It's he's infectious. You can tell he builds people up. You know, he's a vibe. Well, that's the best way I could describe CJ Gardner Johnson. He's just a vibe that exudes confidence, exudes enthusiasm, dogged mentality. He was the Shagger, named the Shagger on our podcast for a reason. And I shout out to Tony Burton if you're listening in, Tony. Tony, when we did our top five most valuable players the other week, you put Gardner Johnson in there as five, and I didn't say it on the podcast, but in my head I was like, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. CJ Gardner Johnson is not a top five most valuable player for the Birds. There are so many other tackles you could put in there. There are so many other edge players you could put in there. You know, there's linebackers you could put in there over him, um, wide receivers, you name it. Um, and Tony, I think I was wrong. I was wrong to doubt you in my mind. CJ Gardner Johnson is one of the most valuable players on this team, and it's not for his play. It's not alone for his play. It's for what he does for the team as a whole. It's for how he rolls them up. So CJ Gardner Johnson, you have my flowers. You are back all the way, baby. Let me get to my. I'll just have a little sup of this beer here. You know, mm, very tasty. Let me talk about another player who hasn't had a lot of flowers so far this year. And he's been out with an injury. He's played the supporting cast role to AJ when he has been there. But least us not forget that this guy is a supreme wide receiver. There's a reason he was in a running for the college award, the Heisman Trophy. There's a reason he had those four touchdowns and 200 yards in the first half of that championship game. There's a reason we know as Eagles fans that we have a wide receiver 1A and a wide receiver 1B. And that's because Devontae Smith is just absolutely excellent. I have no doubt in my mind if he was wide receiver 1 in a team, then his numbers would be through the roof on any other team, and he'd be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. He had an excellent comeback game, which was needed after his drop last week, which would have iced the game. He went for 120 yards this week, averaging 20 yards per catch. He is peaking at the right time for the Eagles. He has four touchdowns and 310 yards in the last four games alone. And I feel like the Eagles are peaking at the right time across the board. You look at AJ, obviously he had a touchdown this week. He had a touchdown last week, and he had the big game the week before when Jalen was throwing it all over the field. It feels like the Eagles' wide receivers are peaking at the right time, which is what you want coming into the playoffs. Shout out to AJ as well for a decent game, and also, shout out to Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is not in my good column. He's not in my bad column. He's in my honorable mentions column. He had a 66% completion percentage, one touchdown, and importantly, he didn't turn the ball over. And I was concerned going into this game for two reasons. First reason being, I was concerned he wasn't going to throw the ball enough, which meant the run game couldn't catch fire. And to be honest with you, that actually kind of came true because Saquon had barely any yards in the first half, while Pickett was at quarterback. He got most of his yards while Tanner McKee was at quarterback. So that tells you what you may or may not want to know about our backup quarterbacks and the threat they perceive to propose to the opposition. Um, and the second reason I was concerned was he only seemed to want to throw the ball to AJ Brown in one-on-one situations and let the talent of AJ Brown do the talking rather than his passing. And on this game in particular for Pickett, he was throwing the ball to Devontae Smith as well, and looked very comfortable doing so. threw a lovely ball to Devontae for a touchdown, albeit he was very wide open. Right, let's get to the next person on my good list. And I don't think it's a secret for any of you guys or girls listening in that I am not a massive fan of Pickett and that I am a much bigger fan of Tanner McKee as our backup quarterback. And this lived through again this week just gone by against Dallas. This guy only attempted 4 passes, but he made the most of them, completing 3 of them, and 2 of them were for touchdowns. If you were bowling a bowler in a cricket game, it's the equivalent to having 2 overs, 3 wickets for 2 runs. Like sensational numbers. It's incredible. He helped the Eagles gain 54 yards through the air, but he had a near perfect 156.2 passer rating. Even on his incompletion, wide receiver AJ Brown nearly made a highlight reel one-handed catch in the end zone, but was just unable to get it when he went back. It didn't matter though. On his next target, he went back to number 11 for a 20-yard touchdown, the first of Tanner McKee's NFL career. And I don't need to go on about what happened after that. I'm sure you all saw AJ Brown realized his mistake, went into the crowd. Went and saw the guy who had it, spoke to him. Big Dom came along as he does and made sure that Tanner got his ball back in a trade for AJ Brown's signed jersey. Well done, that man in the crowd. Although I do think he felt a little bit too um, good of himself. he was very modest about the whole occasion. Right, let's talk about my last person on the good part of the good, bad, and damn right section. And that's Nolan Smith. And Nolan Smith's stats for this game, you're going to be like, well, did Nolan really do that well? I mean, the stats don't show much. He had 1 forced fumble, and he had 2 tackles. Doesn't jump off the screen, but it wasn't just the plays Nolan was making. It was the way that he was impacting the game. It was those non-stat sheet plays that he was bringing to the fore, but also his energy. Did you see how riled up this guy was? Did you see how passionate he was? How enthusiastic he was? The epitome of a dog mentality. And of course, he is a Georgia Bulldog. We talked about last week, I think I made a comment which Tony you liked, which was, could Nolan Smith be the next Brandon Graham? There was another guy who made plays this weekend which didn't show up in the stat sheet, and that was Jalen Carter. So, title of this podcast, I've forgotten, is a dream a reality. Give yourselves a moment to dream of a scenario where the Eagles lose Fletcher Cox and they lose Brandon Graham. Right? It's a horrible scenario. You don't need to dream about that. It's a reality. But dream of a scenario where within a year, both of these guys are replaced with similar talent or better talent in Jalen Carter replacing Fletcher Cox and Nolan Smith replacing Brandon Graham. I don't think we need to dream anymore, folks. I think that's a reality. And boy, does that make me excited about the Birds moving forward. Other honorable mentions, Aaron Burks for forcing a fumble and doing a competent job, I would say. A linebacker, Trotter came in and did an okay job as well. Aaron, he wasn't amazing, but, as someone who was filling in, he did a very, very decent job. Shout out also to Jake Elliott for doing his job and not missing field goals and extra points. It's good to see Jake back doing what we know he can do. Sidney Brown, honorable shout out for being an absolute guard dog, taking on the entire team in a brawl. And I think the whole of Lincoln Financial Field was cheering him and clapping him out as he went off the field. And then also shout out to Nick Sirianni with incredible game management, specifically on the Pickett touchdown, the tush push touchdown for the brotherly shove touchdown for Pickett. You'll remember before he got the touchdown, he was ruled to be short. And Nick did a great job of making sure that we took the timeout with the 10-second runoff, which gave us enough time to make that extra play, which could, and he made some good decisions throughout the game. And the fact that no one's talking about Sirianni anymore just shows you how good a job he's doing. And if anyone is still talking about this team winning in spite of him, now that he has 47 wins in his first 4 seasons as head coach, which ties the record all time, then you're deluded. I'm sorry, I have no other words for you than that. All right, we're going to take a little break and then we're going to do the mailbag of questions I have for the fans. We're going to talk about Saquon. And yeah, we probably got another 10 minutes on us. So speech in a second, Burger.
Celebrate victories, rally.
If I can get this to work.
Celebrate victories, rally through challenges, and bond with fellow fans as you toast with a dram of Loch Lomond single malt whisky. From tailgating gatherings to watch parties at home, Loch Lomond whisky becomes an essential companion, enhancing the moments that make football so extraordinary. It's the perfect accompaniment, from the joy of victory to the bittersweet moments of defeat. Loch Lomond offer a wide range of malts, with their flagship perfectly balanced, and signature expressions Inchmoan and Inchmuren to suit any taste palate. Celebrate greatness, on and off the field this season, with a perfect balance of Loch Lomond whisky and Eagles football. From the first pour to the crowd roar. Fly Eagles fly.
Go Birds. Love listening to that. Shout out to Tony Burton and Loch Lomond Whiskies. I saw Mick McGivern, if you're listening in, toasting with your 21-year-old Loch Lomond the other evening on New Year's Eve. And happy holidays to you all. Right, let's get into the questions from our members. First question. I'm not going to go straight into the Saquon one. Give me a couple of minutes. First one is from Rudders. Hi, Rudders. Thanks for listening to the podcast, buddy. How many players on the current roster do you see being Hall of Famers? Thanks for the question, my man. And I did have to ponder this, and I had to make my lists on the side. You said you had 12, I believe, players who would be Hall of Famers. Now, I also may need to caveat this question a little bit. Do you mean NFL Hall of Famers? Or do you mean Eagles Hall of Famers? I'm not sure. So what I've done is I've gone for players that I could see being NFL Hall of Famers rather than Eagles Hall of Famers. There's one on there which I'm not sure who I'm not sure will make the NFL Hall of Fame, but I'll go through them. I think AJ Brown will be a Hall of Famer. 1K always open. This guy's going to have similar stats by the time he finishes his career to Mike Evans, who's certainly going to be possibly a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think Darius Slay is going to be a Hall of Famer in the NFL. He's made multiple Pro Bowls. His longevity alone is unique for the quarterback position. Most cornerbacks in the NFL, when they hit 31, let alone 32 or 33, tend to die away. I think he's the oldest, if not the second oldest in the NFL at cornerback. Certainly as a starting cornerback in the league, and is still playing at an elite level. I don't think he's playing as well as he did last year, but I still think he's playing at a very good level. And he's playing at a level where he's going to have really, really good games, like the lockdown game he had. I think it was against Washington last week or the one before. And he gave up a couple of plays in this game, but he's still playing at an elite level at cornerback. So AJ Brown and Darius Slay. The third person I'm going to put in there is Saquon Barkley. I'm not going to say any more than that because we're going to touch on him in a minute. The fourth person I'm going to put on that list is Lane Johnson. I think it's fairly obvious that Lane Johnson will be an NFL Hall of Famer. He's been the best right tackle in the league for the last decade, and is a generational talent. It's interesting if any of you guys were watching Good Morning Football the other day. Lane was asked a question which was also asked on Hard Knocks, which was, is it fun to play the tackle position in the NFL? And he had a really good answer for that. And you guys should go and find the full recorded video if you haven't listened to it already. I think Gary Walker put it in our chat yesterday or the day before, and basically said that, you have moments where you enjoy it and but mainly you live vicariously through others' success. So it's not necessarily your own success because the only stats that right tackles get called for are normally the bad ones, or left tackles or any tackle. But you're good when you're not being mentioned, or you're good when a running back breaks some records, which we'll get on to in a minute. So there's my first four: AJ Brown, Darius Slay, Saquon Barkley, and Lane Johnson. The next one, two, three are projections. I think the first four are locked in as Hall of Famers already. The next four are projections. I will go Jordan Mailata. He is the highest rated tackle in the league this year. I don't think he's had enough Pro Bowl nominations yet, but I envisage him continuing to get more and more as the years go by. The Eagles have the best right tackle and left tackle in the league. If you didn't see the stat that I put on our um, which I put on our Twitter feed the other day. Go and check it out. They are ranked highest tackles in the league, right and left, of any tackles in the league. So Jordan Mailata is my number 5. Jalen Carter is my number 6. I think this guy he's one of the best defensive players in the NFL already, and it's crazy to say that in year 2. Oh, he's going to go better and better. Again, you don't see it line up on the stat sheet as much. Like Aaron Donald's does, but it's the plays that he breaks up for others to make. So give me Jalen Carter number 6. 7 is Landon Dickerson. I think Landon Dickerson has the potential to be a Hall of Famer in the NFL. He's already had a couple of Pro Bowls, I believe. I can see him getting Pro Bowls for the rest of his career. Guards don't get the hype the tackles get. But if you were going to put anyone up there as one of the best guards in the league, it's got to be Landon Dickerson. I remember when he was coming out of the draft, and we were talking in this podcast about the fact that he had 3 season-ending injuries year after year, and I don't think he's missed a game in an Eagles jersey. He probably missed one or two that I can't remember, but he's barely missed a game, and he's just a stalwart at that left guard position. And I hope he stays there for a very, very long time, fit and healthy. My final player to round out the 8, good question, Rudders. This podcast is going to be longer than I thought now, is Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham has had a sensational career for the Eagles, and he definitely makes the Eagles Hall of Fame. But I would love to see Brandon Graham make the NFL Hall of Fame as well. We'll see if that comes to pass. Honorable mentions for those who are wondering why I didn't mention other people in this list, because I went down the NFL Hall of Fame route. And I don't necessarily think these players cannot be NFL Hall of Famers. I just think they need to show a lot more than what we've seen already. I feel like Carter and Dickerson have shown enough to be those potential Hall of Famers. I think AJ Brown, Slay, Barkley, and Mailata have already done enough to be considered Hall of Famers. Maybe Mailata needs to do a little bit as well. I think Graham could be one, and I think Carter will be one. These are players I'm going to mention now who I think could be Hall of Famers in the NFL, but have a lot more to do. Jalen Hurts has a lot more to do. He needs to win a Super Bowl. He doesn't need to win more than one. He just needs to win a Super Bowl. He's been MVP in a Super Bowl already. If he wins a Super Bowl and the Eagles continue to be competitive under his stewardship, then I think he makes the Hall of Fame. His rushing stats alone are ridiculous. Quinion Mitchell has the potential to be a Hall of Famer, but we just need to see more, and I can't put him in that bracket yet. Cooper DeJean has the potential to be a Hall of Famer, but again, I need to see more. Nakobe Dean, you could argue, has the potential to be a Hall of Famer. I need to see a lot more. Mekhi Becton, he's only 25. I thought he was older. He has the potential to be a Hall of Famer, but we need to see way more after the torrid start to his career before the Eagles. Cam Jurgens could be a Hall of Famer to replace Kelsey in the future, or not to replace him, to add to the center of the Eagles making the Hall of Fame. Nolan Smith has the potential to be a Hall of Famer if he keeps going at the rate he's going at the moment. And Devontae Smith, I'm not sure, has the potential to be an NFL Hall of Famer just because I think he's going to play backup for so many years. But in another scenario, perhaps Devontae Smith could be a Hall of Famer as well. Okay, need to go through these quickly because we're going for a New Year's lunch with Katie's parents soon. So Ben, next question. This is a good one. Do you run out Hurts for a series or two just to shake off the rust? Now, look, we know the answer to this question already. Jalen Hurts will not be playing a quarterback. But I'm going to talk to you guys about something which I don't think has been discussed much at all. I forget the Saquon Barkley thing for a second, okay, and whether Saquon Barkley should be playing to break the record, because that's a different conversation. This question is specifically about Jalen Hurts and shaking off the rust. If you look at the 2022 Super Bowl run, of the last 4 playable weeks in the NFL, one which was a bye, Jalen Hurts missed 3 of the 4 weeks before the divisional round. One bye, two through injury. That didn't affect Jalen Hurts' ability to tear it up and then become Super Bowl MVP elect without winning it all. So for me, I've no worries about the rust for Jalen Hurts. It's like a second bye week, guys, right? They're talking about bringing a second bye week in anyway. It's just like a bye week. If they had a pass, can't remember the name for it now. If they had the 1 seed and they got a bye in the first round, then I would say play the starters this game, no doubt, because 2 weeks in a row would be too much rust, I think, for the whole team. But the fact that they're playing again next week, give them a rest, get them healthy, make sure they're okay. And let's just talk about the Saquon thing while we're here. To me, it is idiotic for anyone to think it's a good idea to go and try and break a record for Saquon Barkley at the potential detriment to the entire team. And I'll read out something which I posted on the WhatsApp group earlier on today. He's got a 2,000-yard season already. Only 9 people have ever done that. He is the highest rushing yards per game in history across an entire season when fully fit. He can break the all-time rush record for the season, regular season and postseason. He's redefined the value of an elite running back. He can win a Super Bowl for the first time ever. And I said I wouldn't touch on him when we talked about Hall of Famers. He solidified his place as a Hall of Famer in the NFL. Is that not enough, folks? To risk the entire offensive line and him? Because if any of the offensive line goes down, and I mean any of them, right? Any of them. Becton, Dickerson, Mailata, Jurgens, Lane Johnson, any of those guys go down, then the Eagles' Super Bowl winning chance is probably reduced by 30%. Saquon Barkley goes down, I think the chance of the Eagles winning the Super Bowl goes down by 50%. It's just not worth it, folks. It's not worth it. And I just, someone made a comment as well in the chat the other day, which I wanted to come back to. And they said, what's the difference between it being preseason and not playing now? Like, what's the difference? Well, the difference is, folks, if you get injured in preseason, they can still come back. They still have time to come back in that season. If you get injured before the playoffs, the season's over. And the Super Bowl may be over. Anyway, that's my take on playing the starters. And Nick Sirianni, thank you for doing the right thing. Okay, John, thanks for your question. QB2 position next year. Do you stick with Pickett as QB2, give McKee a go and try trade Pickett and pick someone else up in the draft? It's a tough one. I don't know what the cap hit is or the dead cap hit is if we cut Pickett because we've still got him for another year. So I think the only scenario where Tanner McKee is quarterback 2 is if we trade Pickett. And I think we will trade Pickett to someone. If we can get a 4th back, then that will be good because we traded 2 7ths and a move from 120 to 98 to get him to the Steelers. So I don't know, but then you look at Pickett and you think he's an Eagles fan. You know, does he want to be Nick Foles? Does he want to? Is he happy sitting behind QB1 waiting for his chance to shine? Personally, I think Harry will trade him. I think he'll get a 4th for him, or he'll pack him up in a deal. And I think Tanner McKee will be QB2 next year. Thanks for the question, John. Mark, would you rather play the Packers or the Commanders in the wild card round, and why? If you're in the British and Irish Eagles group and you've seen a chat, you'll know that I've said the Commanders again and again and again, all day, every day, and twice on Sundays. Packers can be dangerous with their young receivers and their tight ends. Aaron Jones is a stud, one of the fastest running backs in the league, and they've got a dynamic QB. For me, that's more dangerous than Daniels, McLaurin, and Ertz. McLaurin won't have as good a game as he did against us. When we're fit and healthy, we'll destroy Washington, especially in our backyard at the link. I think it's more likely now that we're going to get the Packers. I believe I've seen. But give me the Commanders all day long. And if you're wondering and you haven't seen in the chat, I would also rather play the Lions than the Vikings. Do you think, Gregor, thank you for the question. Do you think Kellen Moore is putting himself out there as a potential head coach with the way the offense is clicking? No, I don't, Gregor. I think the defense has been league leading this year for the Birds. The offense has been top 7 if you look at the stats. If we win the Super Bowl, then yes, and I hope we do. I can see that happening. I can see him getting a head coaching role. But I could also see him coming back for one more year. I don't think he's blown the lights off people this year. I know he's had head coaching interviews before, and when you look at coaches and you look at coordinators, he's the opposite to Nick Sirianni, I believe, in the sense that Sirianni can galvanize troops, he can galvanize a team, he can inspire a team. And Kellen Moore, no doubt, has a better offensive mind than Nick Sirianni, but maybe that's just his gig. Maybe that's just his gig. So no, not for me. Mick, what's your biggest concern for the playoff run this year? And you cannot say injuries. All right, okay, look. The obvious answer here, Mick, is injuries. With other teams, you could say a number of things like Mahomes, like his wide receivers not catching the ball, or Jared Goff having an off game, or the Bengals defense not doing enough for Burrow to win, or Lamar choking again. But I don't see any of those issues for the Eagles. I don't see a reason, a concern, I suppose, for the Eagles other than injuries. The defense has shown it won't bend or break when healthy on both sides of the ball. The offense has enough to beat any team. When the Eagles are healthy, they win. But I know that doesn't answer your question. So here's a throwaway one, I guess. My biggest concern going into the playoffs is Jake Elliott missing a key field goal. That's my biggest concern going into the playoffs. Thanks, Mick. And I'll round out the last question now, folks, because we are at the 30-minute mark here. Who are you starting versus the Giants if you are resting players? Okay, so I'm not going to name every player, but I'll give you a few here. Obviously, you cannot rest the entire team. You can only not dress up 7 people, I believe. I was listening to the PHL White podcast yesterday. So let me give you some players that I would like to see get reps. I'd like to see Nakobe Dean get a rep or two as he's been out for a week, and I don't want to see him 2 weeks off. Just get his juices flowing. Same for Shipley. If he's past his concussion protocol, I believe he was limited to practice yesterday, which shows good signs towards making it. Hurts is still in concussion protocol, by the way, if you were wondering. I am not worried about Jalen Hurts having 2 weeks off. Give him one drive if you really want to, but I'd rather not. But as we know, he no longer will be. Other players I'd like to see get more reps are Jahan Dotson, Anais Smith, Grant Calcaterra, Jeremiah Tirado Jr., Ajomo, who I think will get a lot of reps. Kenneth Gainwell, I'm fine with him dressing up and playing. Huff, I would love to see more of. Hunt, I'm very happy to see more of. Tyler Steen, I'd like to see more of. Isaiah Rodgers, I'd like to see more of. And I wouldn't mind seeing Sidney Brown blow some people up as well, unless the exclusion rule is like a red card where you miss a game, which I don't believe it is. Breathe. All right, Bird Gang, 32 minutes of me talking at you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you either liked my takes or disagreed with my takes. Either way, that's good podcasting. And look, I hope you all had fabulous holiday festive breaks and good New Year's. And look forward to playing the Giants this coming Sunday and seeing what some of these peripheral players can do. Because as our podcast used to be called Next Man Up, I would imagine during the playoff run, we are going to need a next man up. And on that note, I will love you and leave you. Go Birds, fly Eagles fly. Can I get this to work this time? No.